It started quietly, without a single headline. Not in hospitals, not on the streets, but inside our sleep. The first reports were easy to dismiss: people waking up in a cold sweat, terrified, claiming they'd been chased in dreams by figures that moved wrong. Their faces were half remembered. Their voices echoed like thoughts instead of sounds. Doctors called it mass anxiety, a symptom of a stressed world. But then the first patient woke up with a fever, with confusion, and with eyes that wouldn't quite focus. And that's when the strange pattern emerged. Every single one of them told the same story. They had died in their dream, not symbolically, but vividly, completely, with the kind of certainty that only comes in your final moments. They remembered the exact instant their dream ended because they woke up screaming. Within hours, the sickness took hold. At first, scientists thought it was a coincidence, but none of the infected had been physically harmed. None had contact with known carriers. They didn't even share the same locations. The only thing they shared was sleep. They all described dream figures that behaved like predators, things that were learning, adapting, and remembering. The idea that a disease could cross from a dream into waking life sounded like science fiction. But then EEG scans revealed something terrifying. During REM sleep, the brain activity of the infected synchronized in a way that was completely unnatural, as if multiple minds were brushing up against the same dark space. Soon, the reports flooded in. People were refusing to sleep. They barricaded themselves awake with caffeine and light, terrified of what would happen if they closed their eyes. The world changed overnight. Insomnia became a survival strategy. Cities glowed 24/7, filled with exhausted people who were afraid to dream. Because now, everyone knew the rule. If a dream zombie killed you in your sleep, you woke up infected. And the infected weren't monsters in the way you might think. They weren't violent or aggressive, at least not at first. They were just wrong, emotionally distant, slow to respond. They would repeat phrases they had never learned, or stare into nothing as if listening to something just out of reach. They complained that sleep felt crowded, that their dreams no longer belonged to them alone. Scientists developed a horrifying theory. Consciousness itself had become a vector. The mind was no longer a closed system. Something had learned to move through imagination the way a virus moves through the air. For all of human history, we had treated our dreams as private, harmless fantasies. We never considered what might happen if something learned to live there. These dream zombies weren't mindless. They hunted with intention. They targeted people who dreamed deeply, vividly, creatively. Artists, writers, children, anyone with a strong imagination was now considered high risk because their minds made for better terrain. Governments issued sleep advisories, pushing dream-suppressing medication and regulated sleep schedules. But nothing fully stopped it. Dreams adapt. Even when suppressed, they leak through the cracks. The infected began describing shared locations in their dreams, places that didn't exist in reality, but were remembered with perfect clarity by thousands of people who had never met. Cities made of half-formed memories, hallways built from childhood homes, all stitched together wrong. And somewhere in those impossible dream spaces, the zombies wandered. They weren't rotting or bloody, just distorted human silhouettes with expressions frozen somewhere between hunger and a chilling familiarity. And the most horrifying part, they recognized their victims. They would call out their names in voices that sounded like remembered thoughts. Survivors described waking up just moments before being caught, feeling phantom hands closing around them as consciousness snapped them back into the waking world. These people lived in constant terror, knowing just how close they came. Because in this new world, death in a dream wasn't a metaphor. It was procedural. It was the trigger for infection. Society fractured. Some people chose a life of permanent wakefulness. Others risked sleep in shifts, guarded by observers who watched for the first signs of infection upon waking. Families slept apart. Parents became terrified of their children dreaming too deeply. Lovers were afraid to share a bed because shared sleep seemed to increase the synchronization. A new skill emerged, born from desperation: lucid dreaming. People trained themselves not for fun, but for defense. They learned to recognize the dream state, to control it, to wake themselves up intentionally before the dream zombies could reach them. But the lucid dreamers reported something even worse. The zombies learned. They adapted to awareness. They started breaking the rules of dreams, refusing to dissolve when recognized, maintaining their form even when the logic of the dream should have unraveled them. This confirmed the final, terrible truth. These weren't just nightmares. They were entities, using the architecture of our dreams to propagate. And they were evolving faster than any biological pathogen. Because imagination provided infinite variations. Some researchers proposed this wasn't an invasion from the outside, but an emergence from within, that the collective unconscious humanity has always shared contained something dormant, something that was just waiting for the right conditions to awaken. And now, with the world more connected than ever, our media, our fears, our memories, all synchronized, our dreams had become compatible environments, allowing something to move freely between our minds. Infected individuals started hearing whispers, both awake and asleep, voices promising rest, safety, promising that the waking world was the real nightmare. That message was seductive. Exhaustion weakens resolve. Fear makes you long for an escape. Slowly, some people stopped fighting. They surrendered to sleep willingly, believing that joining the dream space was inevitable. As more and more people became infected, waking reality began to feel thinner, less solid. The boundary between the dream world and the real world started to erode. Lights would flicker for no reason. People's perception of time would distort. Waking hallucinations became common, mirroring the impossible locations from the shared dream space. The ultimate fear was that if enough minds synchronized in sleep, the dream space would simply overwrite waking reality entirely, turning the world into a shared hallucination governed by whatever ruled our dreams. In the final stage of the outbreak, humanity faced an impossible choice: abandon sleep forever and become something brittle and half alive, or accept dreams and risk becoming one of them. Small communities formed around new philosophies. Some embraced constant wakefulness with ritualized stimulation. Others attempted to reshape the dreams themselves, flooding the dream space with shared narratives of safety, resistance, and hope. They were trying to starve the zombies by denying them their food, fear, and in isolated reports, it seemed to work. Some dream zombies weakened, slowed down, became less coherent when surrounded by a sense of calm. This led to the last strategy humanity attempted: not eradication, but coexistence. Teaching children to dream without fear, guiding sleep rather than suppressing it, reclaiming the inner world as a place of agency, not vulnerability. Our dreams had never been harmless. They had simply been unguarded. And now that the truth was known, that sleep was a doorway, not just a rest, humanity stood at the edge of a new evolution. We were learning that survival was no longer about walls or weapons, but about mastering the mind itself. The outbreak didn't happen with a bite or a fever spread in the streets. It happened quietly, every single night, behind closed eyes, where the deadliest monsters had learned to walk. And the only way to survive was not to stop dreaming, but to dream better. Thanks for watching. If this story stuck with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more explorations into the shadows of the mind. Sleep well, if you can.